On this episode of the I Still Believe in Cleveland podcast, we're talking Freddie Kitchens, the new Browns coaching staff hires, Cavs just beat the Lakers, and what's going on with the Indians' Trevor Bauer. Welcome back to the I Still Believe in Cleveland podcast. We are all dressed in our Freddie Kitchens finest. Going with the hoodie, the Delaware hoodie. We'll kick it off here with Drew Swallen.
Thank you, Ryan. A pleasure to be back on the I Still Believe in Cleveland podcast. Go Freddie Kitchens and go Fighting Blue Hens.
And then in the authentic Freddie Kitchens garb, we've got Eric Sonier.
Thanks for having me on. If you're not wearing orange and brown, you don't matter.
Thanks, Eric. So, as everyone knows, a lot has happened with the Cleveland Browns since we last talked. Freddie Kitchens has been hired. Let's kick it off. Let's go back to Eric. What were your thoughts on the Kitchens hire and on Monday's press conference?
Well, my first thought was a lot of complacency. I was pretty happy, I guess you could say, with the hire. I wasn't over the moon. It's not a slam dunk as like a Bill Belichick, Sean Payton, but it's also not a WTF like a Pat Shurmur. I was completely blindsided by that. That being said, he has been growing on me, obviously. And I really think he can really take this team somewhere that it hasn't been in quite some time. So I'm willing to give him a shot. And like I had said last podcast, what he's done with Baker Mayfield and what he's done for this offense that we haven't seen in quite some time really gives me hope. So I'm keeping, long story short, I'm keeping my expectations not through the roof, but you know, that could change in a couple months.
Drew, we talked Freddie Kitchens last week. We said it was going to be sort of the worst case scenario if he left. What were your thoughts on the hire?
Right, yeah. To Eric's point, I think Pat Shurmur remains the only coach that I had given up on based on his initial press conference. So Freddie Kitchens cleared that bar, albeit a small one. I liked what he had to say. I liked the hire in general. He was, I thought, the best option available. The options didn't blow me away this year, but that's okay, right? Like, everybody wanted Hugh Jackson, and they went out and got him. Everybody wanted Chip Kelly, and we were sad that they didn't get him, that he chose somewhere else. And look what that turned into. So I was pleased. I was happy with what he had to say. I'm happy that he's the head coach and that he gets to continue his work with Baker Mayfield and the Cleveland Browns offense.
Yeah, it was the one piece of news that was sort of it's just anti-Browns these days. What is Hugh Jackson's mouthpiece? Mike Silver?
Mike Silver is
Mike
the
Silver.
Jackson mouthpiece, yes.
Oh, my gosh. He was on the NFL Network talking about how the analytics side wanted Stefanski hired, just trying to put a wedge in between the entire Browns organization. And some of these guys that are, I think Joe Banner is another guy who is trying to say, Browns organization, there's so many problems. I was right. They were wrong. And the similarity between Joe Banner and between Hugh Jackson is neither of those guys have jobs in the NFL.
Right.
I really like Freddie Kitchens. He's worked hard. He hasn't been the flashiest head coach, and that's why he hasn't been a head coach yet. But I really like the hiring, and we'll see. The results have been so far so good. And then one of the big surprises that I heard, I didn't think that you could hire an offensive coordinator and not ask him to call the plays, was Todd Monken being hired as the offensive coordinator. What do you guys think about this hire, and how is that going to work?
Sure. So one of the things that I like that I like about what you just said was that one of the things that Freddie Kitchens mentioned about the reason that he hasn't been hired yet is because he doesn't actively market himself. And Joe Banner and Hugh Jackson are two absolute world-class self-marketers. And that's why they got to where they were, and eventually things sort of fell apart on them. But anyway, with Monken, I thought that was probably the best hire that was out there in terms of possible offensive coordinator candidates. You're talking about the guy that had the best passing offense in the league. He brought back the return of Fitzmagic, which is really hard to do when the guy's 35 years old now. He made Jameis Winston look like every bit of the number 1 overall draft pick that he was a couple years back. He's an air raid coach. And there was a quote that he gave that I really liked. I actually wrote it down for today's podcast.
Eric's throwing us off with his garb that he's got here.
I like having fun. I don't know why it has to feel like such drudgery all the time. Who needs more 5-yard plays? How about we be explosive? That's what the game is about. People like plays. I like big plays. Chicks dig the long ball. I threw in that last sentence on my own, but that's the sort of attitude that you need to have as an offensive coordinator in today's NFL. This idea that you need to stay ahead of the chains, ahead of the situation, do everything you can to get to 3rd and 3 and 3rd and 2. That is no longer what offense is in the NFL. It's not about getting to 3rd and 2 and then trying to pick up 3 yards. It's about picking up 30 yards every time you have the ball. And I really like that that's going to be the Browns' attitude going forward.
I like it. Eric, your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, to Drew's point, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had Peyton Barber, not Peyton Hillis, not Rondé Barber, not Tiki Barber. I mean, come on. They had nobody at running back, so they were forced to throw. That being said, the Cleveland Browns offense, like he's looking for those large plays, those long plays. We were going to have Nick Chubb, possibly Duke Johnson, possibly somebody else to open up this offense. We will be throwing the ball a lot, but to have that run game open up any multitude of availability for passing for Baker Mayfield down the field is going to open up wonders for the offense. I feel without him calling the plays directly, there's going to be a little disruption from last year, as there wouldn't be much change in the playbook. They could open up for new formations, new play calls, but it's going to be kind of sticking to the script from 2018.
I like that the language will be the same for Baker.
Yeah. Yes. You hear all the stories about RG3 or this quarterback or quarterback X, this guy from the Vikings.
Kirk Cousins.
Kirk Cousins, how he has 3 or 4 different coordinators in his first whatever years. I'm glad Baker doesn't have to go through that, knock on wood, at least for now. And he's used to that same type of language while he's growing and developing over the first couple of years in his professional career.
He will have 3 coordinators by the time he plays his 15th game. But
yeah, that's true. But hopefully, obviously, Freddie's the guy who's harboring most of his day-to-day practicing. But, I think this is a smart hire for the Cleveland Browns. We have a guy who's got experience, but we're still running Freddie Kitchens' offense. And if he goes somewhere next year, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. I mean, it would have been because we have had a good season. But I think this is going to be a really good opportunity for both parties.
Yeah, the Buccaneers averaged 430 yards of offense against the AFC North last year. So he knows how to attack these teams, or at least what he did work in Tampa Bay. So I'm excited to see if he can transfer some of that here.
Yeah, I've heard that the Packers are going to have the same relationship between their offensive coordinator and their head coach. So maybe a new trend here in the NFL. So let's move over to the defensive coordinator hiring. The Browns have hired the former Arizona Cardinals coach, Steve Wilks. Are you guys worried that we're hiring a coach that was fired after his first season?
I'm not, because we're not hiring him to be the head coach. I actually really like that he has some head coaching experience. I wanted Freddie Kitchens to be able to lean on someone who has been a head coach before, who has helped organize all practices for the whole squad, all that stuff that's going to be new for him. It'll be nice to have somebody that has done that before. However brief, it's good to have somebody that has that sort of experience. But the Arizona Cardinals had the league's worst offense by a pretty healthy margin, and despite that, they still finished 13th in total defense, which is really impressive when you consider how long they were out there on the field. And they when he was the defensive coordinator for the Panthers, they were third in rushing defense. Steve Wilks was considered for the Chicago Bears head coaching job as well. So he's somebody before they hired Matt Nagy. This would have been a couple years back, but he's somebody that is well respected around the league. Briggs for the Bears really wanted him to be brought on. He sort of vouched for Steve Wilks and some of the leadership qualities that he has. So I think it's a real positive hire. I think it's going to be different than what we had with Greg, who was all about trying to create a turnover and selling out to try to generate big plays on defense. I think there's still going to be plenty of that, plenty of blitzing and plenty of aggressive play calls, but hopefully they're not as susceptible to some of the big plays that they were in 2018.
Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, some people in this league aren't cut out to be the CEOs and are more prone to be direct reports, and maybe Steve Wilks is one of those people. Maybe he'll get another opportunity to be a head coach, but for now, I'll take him as defensive coordinator. Like Drew had said, you're relying on offense with Josh Rosen, aging Larry Fitzgerald, and David Johnson, and a bunch of nobodies. So, their defense really had to step up and try to put them in games. Thing I like about Wilks is he has been with the secondary for the Carolina Panthers in some capacity for the previous 7 years before that. And this being a passing league, you need to have a good secondary. We have the talent. Whether Terrence Mitchell stays, I know he signed a 1-year contract, whether he stays, TJ Carey, or if we draft the cornerback opposite Denzel Ward, we could have a really tremendous secondary, and Steve Wilks could really mold this unit into something special. And then it's just a matter of getting the front seven to not allow guys to run 10, 15 yards past them. So I really like this hire, and I'm really excited to see what this defense can do. And I agree. Greg Williams, to what Drew said, Greg really he knew that he would susceptible to the big plays. So the only way to prevent that is to force turnovers. Turnovers are nice, but if we can force 3 and outs, I'll be happy with that.
Yeah, they were specifically on the ground, the big plays on the ground, the 12 yards rush or the 60-yard rush. They gave up more of those than seemingly any other team. That's not accurate, but they did finish like 28th in rushing yards allowed. Despite being ahead in a lot of games. So hopefully that gets a little better. There's some personnel issues to clean up. They need a defensive tackle. They could use an outside linebacker. There's no depth at linebacker. So, they still need some help there. But hopefully some of the scheme fits help with that, the susceptibility to big plays on the ground.
All right, let's move on to some tribe talk. So a couple big stories related to the Indians. They had Tribe Fest was going on. They signed Francisco Lindor to a $10.5 million contract for 2019. He still has 2 more years after that. It's just those 2 years up until after the 2021 season. Each of those seasons go through arbitration. So looks like we should still have Francisco Lindor for 3 more years. He's just getting paid a lot more. He was only making about $650,000 this previous year. So good for him. On the other side of arbitration, we've got Trevor Bauer, who did not come to a settlement with the Indians. As reported by ESPN, he was asking for 13. Indians were offering 11. They didn't come to an agreement. That's one issue with Trevor Bauer. The other thing that you probably don't want to have pop up when you're going to through contract talks is he had a trade-off on Twitter So the story is summarized on Sports Illustrated. I'll put a link in the show notes. But it's a Texas State University senior, senior Nikki Giles. Big fan of the Houston Astros. Our favorite player is Alex Bregman. She just got into back and forth with Trevor, saying that Bauer was her least favorite player in all of sports. Bauer fought back, and she reported the issue. Bauer had a apology, and that's what happened. We're not going to judge whether Trevor was right in this situation, but just in general, do you think it's fair for athletes to be engaging with fans in sort of a combative manner? We've seen this with Kevin Durant. We've seen it with lots of guys. Drew,
the
go
only
ahead.
issue I had is that he apologized for it. Trevor Bauer at Bauer Outage. The best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be. That's another wrestling reference. You're welcome. He is an excellent Twitter follow. He is one of my favorite players to ever play for the Cleveland Indians. I love that sort of attitude. If you are going to troll Trevor Bauer, you are going to get trolled back. I don't know where he finds the time to do it, but I have absolutely no issue whatsoever if somebody says you're my least favorite player of coming back and saying, well, you root for a team of cheaters, right? Like, I don't care. Good. I wish they had come to an agreement on arbitration. I wish they were able to re-sign him. It looks like none of that's going to happen. I think he's not long for this world of a small market baseball team. He's somebody that's going to get $15 million a year. But what I'm going to miss is both his ability to be an excellent, 1B to Corey Kluber's 1A, and following him on Twitter. He's a wonderful Twitter follow, and I'm going to miss that interaction with the fans. I have absolutely no issue with it whatsoever.
Eric, what do you think?
Well, I'll take the opposite side of the coin. Is that I understand that's his personality, but I see a little value in it for himself. It gives more of a voice to the Twitter tough guys. It's the equivalent of yelling at a heckler at a baseball game. It's showing that they're getting under his skin. I understand. I mean, it's free speech. Do whatever you want. But and like Drew said, how much time do you have? I mean, I feel like I get less and less time per day, and I'm not working doing my baseball craft how many hours a day. But teach your own. If he wants to do it, that's great. But I just don't see tremendous value in it. And I would go the Mitch Trubisky route and just close Twitter probably.
I just wonder if this keeps fans honest. We've even seen in the NFL, there's been some players who there will be fans heckling them. And I've seen a couple NBA or NFL players go up to the stands and yell at the person and, get into their face. And it's like, you wouldn't believe that this person would go up to them. They're still, having a line in between those two. You don't want to have a Ron Artest situation, but,
Right.
but there's still a line, but maybe it does keep fans in check and helps them realize that these are just real people on the other side as well.
Now, you know what? There aren't enough bad guys in professional sports anymore. There aren't. It's better when there's somebody to root against. It's better when you can root against Tom Brady. If the AFC Championship game was, the Chiefs versus the Colts, like it was in the divisional round, you'd be less interested. You would. You don't have the evil empire of the hoodie to root against, right? Like, and these aren't even bad people. These are just, teams that we root against. But the fact that Trevor Bauer has turned himself into a heel, I think, is wonderful. I think it's more of a reason to watch the game. And Eric's good buddy Ric Flair figured that out long ago, that there needs to be a bad guy to keep people interested, and I will die on this hill that there aren't enough bad guys in sports. There's not enough Grayson Allens. There aren't enough Draymond Greens of the world. These people are excellent to hate on, and I think that if Trevor Bauer positions himself that way, Next time Trevor Bauer faces the Houston Astros, you can't tell me people aren't going to be interested in watching that game.
So it sounds like we're setting up a bad boy tag team of Trevor Bauer and Baker Mayfield. I had to rule Cleveland.
The new age outlaws.
Right. It's got to first thing that popped in my head. It's got to make you wonder what would have happened if John Rocker was on social media 15, 20 years ago. But I guess that's not a question for another day. But just something to ponder.
Yeah, with Rockers,
Rocker was he might have taken it a little too far, but there's
because it was originally that Sports Illustrated article where Rocker said all that crazy stuff. He came to the Indians at some point, and he wasn't very.
Yeah, it was after that. He was that was when he was with the Braves when he was at his sort of his peak starting. Right. Yeah, he sort of got the karma that he probably deserved. Some of the things that he went on record saying, but I mean, there's obviously lines. You can take things too far. I don't think that Trevor is anywhere close to those lines yet.
So you don't think? I think with Bauer, he's going to be competing with Kluber as who is the number one guy on the Indians for much of the season. Bauer was unstoppable.
He was the best pitcher last year. I mean, the stats will back that up. I mean, Corey's still the ace of the staff because of his full body of work. But if we just look at what happened in 2018, Trevor Bauer was the best pitcher they had.
Eric, you think this affects his effectiveness?
Yeah. So, I mean, I looked at the last 5 years or so of the two candidates. Bauer had a 2.21 ERA, won 2/3 of his games, and had the most strikeouts out of any year last year in the last 5 years. Kluber still got him in 2 of the 3 categories. I understand he had more starts, so it's not an apples to apples comparison. So, I mean, if Bauer keeps it up, then yeah, he could become the ace. But I would hedge my bets right now on Kluber. He's been sub 3 ERA the last 4 or 5 years, and Bauer's been over 4, I believe, the last 4 years, except for this past year when it was a 2.21. So Bauer stays healthy and keeps it going, then like I said, perhaps he could be the 1A, but he's not a bad 1B to have.
Yeah, I mean, Bauer's issue has always been that based on the intense sort of training he does, that he just flamed out come August. He had nothing left, and the Indians worked with him in 2017 and 2018 to where he was able to sustain that a little longer. So, I mean, I think Trevor Bauer is absolutely an ace. I don't think he's going to play many more years for the Indians. This might very well be his last if things don't go well. You might see him even moved at the trading deadline because they're not going to be able to re-sign him. I don't think. I don't think he's a guy that you can spend $20 million a year on if you're a small market team. And I think that's the sort of money he's going to get that his stuff probably deserves.
Yeah, he had a strong year last year. Just that freak injury with the line drive that hit him.
Right.
So who knows, what that could have been like if he doesn't get hit by that line drive. But yeah, we'll be rooting for Bauer this upcoming season, bad boy or not.
Absolutely.
All right, and let's round it out with some Cavaliers talk. The Cavs beat the Lakers in Los Angeles with LeBron James watching on the bench. Lakers didn't really look so good. Missed a ton of 3-pointers, and one of the themes that's going to be going around the NBA is the NBA trading deadline is coming up. First off, let's say which team is going to be more active this trading deadline. Are the Lakers going to turn over their roster, or are the Cavs going to continue to dismantle this roster that they have? Eric, let's kick it off with you first.
I'm probably going to say that the Lakers are probably going to try to push some of their chips to the center of the table to try to make a playoff run. I believe last time I've heard they're in the 8th seed right now, and that's with LeBron being hurt for the last, week and a half, 2 weeks. So I believe they're going to be doing more moves. And I think the more likely The only moves the Cavs are going to be doing is more of a tear down. I mean, the only two chips they really have for trading are Tristan Thompson and Kevin Love. I'd be betting that the Lakers would be more active in the trade deadline.
Yeah, they certainly ought to be, right? If you have the greatest of all time on your roster, by definition, you have a championship window, right? But that Lakers cast, when you don't get Boogie Cousins, when you don't get Paul George, and you think you're going to, now all of a sudden it turns into, well, what are we doing here, right? Like that Lakers supporting cast is every bit as bad as the corpse that LeBron James drug into the Eastern Conference Finals to beat Boston in 7 games, right? Like that Lakers cast is outside of Brandon Ingram, I mean, there's not much to like, and even Brandon Ingram is somebody that you can absolutely move if you can get a bona fide, legitimate number 2 player. I mean, you're not going to be shy about moving Brandon Ingram for Kawhi Leonard. You're just not. It's a trade you're going to make. So certainly, I hope for LeBron's sake that the Lakers are more active. But I would love to see the Cavs try to unload some salary. I'd love to see them move Tristan Thompson. I'd like to see them try to get some real value for Kevin Love if they can. I'm not going to give Kevin Love away. If I can't get a top draft pick for Kevin Love that I can turn into a long-term asset, I'm not going to give him away. He's under contract for the next couple of years, so I'm not going to give him away. But I would love to see the Cavs try to move some of those pieces to acquire a long-term asset or another lottery ticket in the draft.
So LeBron certainly has a playbook as far as applying pressure on the front office.
Sure, he's no stranger to playing GM.
We've seen lots of trades, but we've also seen the Cavs switch head coaches. You look at both the Cavs and Lakers, whose job is more in jeopardy? Is it Luke Walton or is it Larry Drew?
It's got to be Luke Walton, right? I mean, all it takes is for LeBron James to say we could be doing better if we had a different coach, and see you later. We saw that, and usually it tends to work out. He's usually correct. There's a reason he's the greatest of all time. It's because he can recognize this sort of stuff and say that that the coach isn't getting it done. And if they miss the playoffs, Luke Walton will absolutely be fired, and he should be. You shouldn't be known as the guy that cost LeBron James as the coach of the roster that led to LeBron James missing the playoffs. It just he should be fired if they miss the playoffs, and he will be fired if LeBron James determines it so.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Larry Drew is going to be there with the Cavs for the teardown, whether it's just the remainder of this year or if it's all the way through next year or a portion of next year. I'm hoping it's not that long, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, Lakers going to do whatever that LeBron wants. If he wants Ty Lue to come, he's gonna get Ty Lue to come. I mean, you could go down the list. The only coach I guess he kind of had a decent relationship for a multitude of years, I guess, was Eric Spoelstra. It's probably because he basically said, hey, just sit there and I'll let me run the team. Didn't really challenge him. But, yeah, it's definitely going to be Larry Drew staying longer. And if Luke Walton stays this year, that could happen.
If the Lakers turn it around, right? When you have the GOAT.
I would probably be surprised if he stayed after next year, but to answer the question, it's going to be Larry Drew.
All right, let's jump into our final segment, the final promo, and we're going to keep with the team that's been the talk of the town.
As we should.
Everyone's flying high. Freddie Kitchens is the lovable coach that everyone thinks is going to bring the Browns to the Super Bowl. But let's just stop at the playoffs here. Mm-hmm. Why do you think the Browns are going to make the playoffs in 2019?
Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, Drew, kick it off for us here.
Yeah, Baker Mayfield. That's the reason they're going to make the playoffs in 2019, because they have one of the 10 best quarterbacks in the league right now. And I mean, that's not saying rookie this. That's not saying that a young quarterback that. They have one of the 10 best quarterbacks in the world on the roster right now. He's 24 years old. He will be entering his first actual offseason in the NFL, where he actually gets to prepare to be a starting quarterback. He actually gets, some reps with the first team offense throughout training camp. He is the reason that they're going to make the playoffs in 2019, because he is one of the 10 best quarterbacks in the world. And it's going to be so much fun to watch that offense that can be explosive and score at any time. So he's the reason, and he's the reason that there's so much excitement about this team.
All right, Eric, can you top that?
There's a reason I wanted to go first.
Yeah, right. I mean, they're just going to have a talent discrepancy with a lot of the teams they're going to play. It starts a lot with that quarterback position, but it also goes to the defense. You're going to have Myles Garrett. You're going to have Denzel Ward. You're going to have Larry Ogunjobi. And going back to the offense, you're going to have Nick Chubb. You're going to be facing, as I referenced previously, your Josh Allen. Who's a Dolphins? Is Tannehill even gonna be there anymore? I mean, come on. They're gonna be playing a bunch of poorly run offenses with coaching turnovers who I'm not very confident with, and I really think it's just gonna be a talent discrepancy and something we haven't seen in a while. I'm used to it. See, being an Ohio State fan, playing Maryland or Rutgers every year, but I'm finally can't wait to see this in the NFL, where it's the Browns are favored by 14, Browns are favored by 10, Browns are favored by 21, and actually
21 points in the NFL.
Okay, maybe not 21. That one might be stretching it, but
we got Baker.
we'll stop at 17, but also getting those covers, and so it's along those lines, and it's also a team that I don't think would play down to their competition. They're young. They want to fight for their coach. They want to fight for themselves. They have their own reputations. So I know that they're not going to let up.
That's right. I'll throw in one more draft from John Dorsey, and I think the Browns are going to be ready here. So I want to thank you guys for joining the I Still Believe in Cleveland podcast. Another fun one, and we will talk again next week.
All right, sounds good.